Hi, my name is Ryan Drakowski. My project for our 401 capstone course is to implement a intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention system, and I'd like to also implement a few other capabilities into the system to help prevent malware. This is incredibly difficult with standalone products, as most malware detection these days is dependent upon signature-based recognition. What you really need to actively prevent zero-day malware and other threats that come out almost practically hourly, daily, is to actually look at a behavior side capability system, so that you can monitor your active network, monitor your endpoints, and see if there's any suspicious activity growing based upon just known behaviors, files leaving the system, random scans occurring that don't appear to be coming from inside the network or just have no reason to be happening. So there definitely is an increasing amount of need, especially in smaller size networks, to increase their security presence. So the motivation for this project was to set up and develop a IDS, IPS that is economically feasible for small businesses, smaller organizations that don't necessarily have the economic capability to employ a full-time system administrator. Not only to set up the software, set up the rules and such, but the hardware for enterprise-level systems is pretty cost-prohibitive for most companies, ranging in the range of $6,000 to $20,000, depending on the initial installation cost and how many users you have on site and what capabilities you're looking to implement. So what I'd like to do is, with the aid of a open source program called Security Onion, is help develop a easy to install, easy to configure, and pretty much give the capabilities of these full-fledged enterprise systems at a very, very low cost that are just as effective. Generally what you find with most inexpensive or free intrusion detection systems is you might get some capability that you have the enterprise systems, but they're not easily relatable to your average computer user. The reports are pretty cryptic, they're very, very technical, not very visual, and they really don't provide a lot of information that your normal user is able to ingest and decipher. In addition to that, I'd like to implement some reporting functions into this IDS IPS that make it a lot easier to see when you have issues, where they're coming from, and act immediately, instead of which is the common practice over the past few years, is most intrusions aren't really detected for upwards of 3-4 months, and by then it's far too late to mitigate any damage. Yeah, the damage has been done. It's really you're only able to close the holes, and you're on the hook for a lot of financial worry if you spill out client information, spill out credit card numbers, share industry secrets with people who don't need to necessarily have them, and also face the potential of some of the most recent attacks, which is ransomware, which can completely come in and encrypt and destroy your complete company's network, which can set you back substantially if proper backups aren't prepared. So yes, again, the history of the problem, most smaller size organizations tend to only implement a firewall on the hardware level, and normally this is just one firewall right at the WAN junction where the private network is meeting the internet. If it even is installed, it's normally very poorly configured. We're always looking for convenience in our workday, and so a lot of service ports are opened up that shouldn't be always open. and allows a lot of holes into the network that shouldn't be opened up for hackers. You know, a lot of the interaction you're going to get from the outside with attacks is going to be normally by your novice hacker, just port scanning a really wide variety of IP addresses. And if you leave a lot of your ports open, you're gonna look like a very easy prospect for these hackers who don't necessarily have that many skills, but they obviously can recognize low-hanging fruit when they see it. And so what we'd like to do is, you know, provide a lot more protection than what your conventional network firewall is going to allow. And since the firewall itself generally only restricts the capability of attacks coming from the outside, what this system, this IDS and IPS, allows you to do is to prevent attacks from the interior, whether that be from disgruntled employees or just very untech savvy employees who tend to click on bait links, and also you have the possibility of an intrusion originating on your Wi-Fi network, which is obviously behind the firewall, and is very susceptible, especially if you're not using you know, very good passwords and using the latest encryption methods on your network itself. So just a couple quick facts I was kind of pouring over here over the past couple years here in just particular. You know, we're looking at upwards of $100 billion in cost to mitigate and recover from cybersecurity attacks worldwide. You know, as you can see from these graphs, they're only growing every year, especially in the United States, and you know, it seems like the companies that get a lot of attention are going to be your larger enterprises that have a lot of trade secrets to spill. Obviously, since they have the most information and probably the greatest dollar-wise information to secure, attackers are really going for these companies. I think in the future, once these companies wise up and introduce some stricter security measures, you're going to see a lot more attacks going for these middle-sized and smaller-sized businesses that just don't have a good security practice in line. And you know, attacks on these type of companies can be detrimental. They could shut a business down because they really don't have the capital to pull them out of a huge attack. So I thought this was interesting here too. The addition of social media. It seems like a lot of social media is opening up a lot more doors to potential attacks. You're seeing a lot of phishing attacks come through social media now. These links that are being shared by what you think are friends can come from compromised accounts, and so you have a very high sense of trust when you're looking at some of these links and clicking through, and it doesn't take much to introduce a zero-day exploit with no protection at all by any conventional antivirus or endpoint protection software. Since you know, these attacks are brand new, they require a signature to be developed by the AV companies, antivirus companies, then distributed out to your AV software. That you have to make sure yours is updated, and you know, so at least a minimum of a few days, and more often than not a few weeks or a few months before your actual protection is implemented. So with these behavior-based heuristics, we can take a look at what's actually actively happening on a second-by-second basis and help to mitigate any damage immediately, instead of months down the road when you realize there has been a problem or there has been a leak. Then also too, you know, like I said here, there's really almost 100% vulnerability by every system. You know, if they haven't really been able to create any secure software platforms, operating systems, especially if you're running a Windows type system, there seems like there's an incredible amount of vulnerabilities discovered on a weekly basis. And if you don't have a very strong patching policy, you're going to leave yourself wide open to a lot of exploits. And you'd be surprised to find out how many of the attacks are actually originated by employees. Malicious insiders are going to be above 50% of the attacks that you're seeing on your company network. Whether or not they are malicious, or they are tricked, or they are just completely careless, these employees on your own network are really your largest danger. So it's really important to monitor them the closest, especially since there's not just one focus point to concentrate as your network traffic leaves the internet. You need to, if the capabilities offer, to be able to monitor each endpoint, so that it's very easy to actually track down a problem. Once you see some behavior come up with your IDS, your IPS system, if you have the proper logs and you're doing proper packet capture, you can trace back step by step how the attack originated, who the original source was that clicked or introduced this vulnerability into your system, and then you can work to mitigate those problems in the future. Social engineering is obviously a huge issue. I think this training is probably some of the biggest you can introduce to your employees as well. You get a guy calling up claiming to be tech support, and they can own your whole network pretty quickly if you don't give a little bit of guidance to your employees. I think this problem is really interesting just because of the sheer fact that most of these systems are just so expensive. If you look at product offerings by RSA, initial hardware cost is upwards of $6,000 just to install a physical system on the network. And then you're talking about site licenses and subscription licenses on a month-by-month or year-by-year basis, which can run multiple thousands of dollars as well. And this makes these type of systems really out of reach of most small to medium-sized businesses and organizations. These smaller organizations are just as vital. They need to protect their clients and companies' information just as much as anybody else does. Why does the problem occur and when? Any system that's connected to the internet is highly susceptible to intrusion. Hackers operate from all over the globe, so you're susceptible to attacks at any time of the day, any day of the week. These attacks are usually very patient in nature, and some of these attackers don't have much to do except for really take their time in exploring your system, researching vulnerabilities very thoroughly before they make any moves. And this can be really critical in the amount of information they can extract and the damage they can do, because they could set up for months just researching your network, researching your employees, researching all the usernames that are potentially used on your network, and allows them to, once they decided to attack, to really cause a lot of damage quickly and own your system to the point where you might not be able to recover it. And then really seeing an increase in the whole security holes that have been opening up too, with these SaaS type applications that people are using, software as a service, which is like an online-based program such as Dropbox, Salesforce, a lot of these other programs that you see in the news getting compromised, usernames and passwords being compromised, and generally most users are using the same exact username, same exact password all throughout their dealings with the web. And so if you even have one employee compromised on Adult Friend Finder, for instance, there's a good chance that he can use that information to exploit your own network. So the project will achieve providing a very high level enterprise level of security for a very low cost mostly just for the initial install and setup. The software itself is pretty easy to install. For my setup here, I just installed it on a virtual machine that is running on my Linux machine, but you could run it on any operating system. Preferably, I would recommend setting up a standalone box for the agent, which does most of the work, all the packet capture and the log creation, which can be quite resource intensive. So it would be nice if that wasn't affecting any other processes on your company's server. And on top of that, we want to add a lot more functionality to what is existing in the Security Onion framework. So adding the ability to do email and malware scanning, adding a lot of signature-based detection in addition to the behavior and role-based detection that is implemented in the system as is, and then also to be able to create reports that the layperson can understand and implement to create better security practices. In addition to that, what I'd like to do is also create some kind of application that could be used mobily, so a mobile web application, or even considering an actual iOS or Android application, so that this application could be used by whoever's in charge of the system security, and they can be notified remotely at any time of the day or night if there's any issues on the network, if there's any issues popping up that demand their attention. Traditionally, a lot of these alerts are sent by email. They don't push onto the phone to alert, and so it'd be nice if we could have something set up that provides a immediate alert on the user's phone. For the resources of the project, I've used quite a variety of just desktop hardware. So a few laptops, a computer server, which is housing the agent for me, which is doing the packet capture, and then that's about it. It's a pretty simple setup to create a virtual network and to start implementing and testing the system. And to spread that to an enterprise or to a small business organization, there's not much more to add. You could, again, just use one single box to set up the agent, and then the monitoring could be done remotely by any number of workstations in the system. Resources, depending on how long you want to capture log data and how big of a system you have, it's going to require quite a bit of memory and storage capabilities. So if you have to run into any compliance issues, if you're doing payment cards or if you are involved in the healthcare industry, there are some pretty strict requirements on how long you need to secure and log your data for future looks into the system if you have any attacks. So depending on how long you need to store data and how much throughput you're doing per day, the storage capabilities can get quite intense. Luckily, storage costs have really come down the past couple years, and it'd be pretty easy to archive a lot of this data for 30 to 60 days with not too much overhead cost. So a few of the user stories that I thought would be pretty useful for this project is that for example, the company network was attacked and intruded upon. They found some of their sensitive information for sale online. Actually, like maybe a rival company had seen it available online and notified them that it was out there, and the company really has no idea of where or when this attack did occur. And so by using this IDS, IPS software, we can track back even months, even years, depending on how long you store your data, and take a look at any anomalies in the system. If there's actually any particular files that were being transferred out that showed up on the internet. You could actually search for the particular file name or any particular text that might have escaped the system, credit cards or that kind of thing. Another one that I thought would be a great idea for is a startup company doesn't really have a lot of money, working capital for a lot of security on their system initially, although they are holding a lot of sensitive client information and a lot of trade secrets that they can't afford to share. They could implement a system like this and save quite a bit of money, but still have the protection of a enterprise level system. So acceptance criteria is that for this working effectively is if we can set this up, if a low-level user could install the system and configure it to some general baselines depending on their industry, and then actually monitor and successfully capture any attacks, then we would have a working product here, and then also keeping the cost of maintenance down. So if you didn't have to actually hire a full-time system administrator to monitor the system. Rough timelines on the setting up the system is really, the installation is pretty simple and quick. It's a 1 gigabyte ISO file that can be downloaded in a few minutes. Setting up your own dedicated box or setting up a virtual machine is pretty quick as well. Installation takes 5-10 minutes. Setup initially is very quick as well. Basically install it, it's run off a Ubuntu operating system, Debian style. So install the Linux ISO, and it's a graphical user interface for walking through the installation and initial setup. Aside from setting up a secure SSH channel between the agent and the manager, there's not a whole lot of additional configuration required until you start getting into the additional rules that you want to implement depending on what kind of system you're protecting and to minimize any false positives. So creating the instance can be done in a day. Installation of endpoint protection would take a little bit longer depending on the severity of your practice, and so probably in the range of a week to get to endpoint protection all enabled and configured correctly. Beyond that, testing the system once you have a kind of a baseline setup done, probably spend about 1 to 2 weeks in testing the system, doing some attacks on different sectors of the network to determine what security levels need to be increased or decreased. So another 2 weeks for that, and then probably monitor the whole system for another month to really just fine-tune all the settings. And then also we want to make sure that now we're slowing down the system as well. So using that dedicated separate box, we can really minimize any slowdown in network traffic. And so we want to keep an eye on that too and make sure that we're not dropping a lot of packets and negatively impacting the workflow of the company. Challenges for the project so far is, for me at least, has been the program itself is pretty resource intensive. So having enough systems to put together to really stop the to allow it to run effectively and to capture all the files without any packet loss has been a little difficult. It definitely, if you have a pretty strong system with 10 gigs of RAM, 15 gigs of RAM, and a couple terabytes of storage data, you'll be able to monitor that just fine. But combining that with running a lot of the virtual network has been a little challenging so far. And then beyond that, just configuring all the rule systems to make sure that we're getting a very effective product. So the X factor for this project, again, is hugely economic. We're getting the capabilities of an enterprise level system such as RSA's NetWitness in a product that's free to download for anybody. And with the additions that I'd like to implement in configuration and reporting and additional signature-based detection, I think we'll be able to produce an incredible software package for free, and with just a minor bit of setup by a technical individual, make sure that all the network hardware is properly patched, all the endpoint systems have a good patching policy. I think we'll be able to really provide a product that's amazingly powerful and successful at an incredibly low cost, available to everyone. In addition to that, there's a few other products that I've been in contact with through my internship that I thought would be great to implement as well. One of them is called Phantom, and what it allows you to do is write playbooks with Python code, so you can automate a lot of the processes. For instance, if a piece of malware comes through your email server, the software once detected, can automatically send the malware piece directly to a virus detection software center, check the risk score on that particular piece of malware. At the same time, can inform the intended recipient of the issue, so they know that the email has come through, and if it's a valid file, that they can help to override any destruction of that file. Also, we could actively talk to the system administrator, whoever is monitoring the network that day, to immediately inform them of this issue, so they can put their own eyes on it, because that seems to be the best way to really check out a lot of these phishing emails, is putting a technician's eyes on it. You can really quickly determine if this is an issue or not. And then depending on the risk score, depending on what the recipient has if he knows that that's a legitimate issue, you can help to resolve the whole interaction with the software, the Security Operations Center, without much interaction with an IT representative. So I want to give you a quick peek at what the system looks like. I have the agent installed on another computer here on the network, and we're going to take a quick look at the management screen here. So this is, again, running in VirtualBox, a free virtual machine program here. I've already installed it, and we are just going to take a look at the Security Operations Center home screen to basically take a look at what's going on in the network so far. So Squill is going to be our Security Operations Center for this product. We can monitor all of the endpoints. I guess one thing I missed about the cool thing about this is it's a distributed system, so we can install as many agents as we like all throughout the network, and so have a really good idea of what's happening in all corners of the network. If we have several different subnets, if we have some servers that are behind several levels of protection, if we want to monitor what's going on in the DMZ that are DNS servers and web servers, we can place an agent there. We can even place it in different pools of different offices, so that you have a really good idea of what's going on, extremely localized with the network itself. So what I have here, we have a couple events going on that I've been kind of hacking the network a bit, and it's popping up with a few alerts here. So I thought what I'd do real quick is start up a real quick attack so we could see how the system is responding. So using Kali Linux, which has quite a few nice tools in here for subverting systems, we'll do a quick attack on a easily exploitable system that intentionally has some open services open that we can exploit. I'm going to do a pretty intense scan on this particular machine so that we can see what services are open. We're doing a scan of all ports. Increasing the verbosity so we know as much data as we can about this subject. And then I'm going to output this information into a text file so we can play with it later. Oops. So if we go back into our system here, we can just monitor and see if anything pops up with our scan. So we've completed a stealth scan that's gone through and scanned for every port just to see if anything's open. We've found quite a few ports open, looks like so far. And now it's going to start doing a pretty verbose service scan to see what is attached to those services, to those open ports. Looking at that, this is the list of all the agents. So the manager is what I'm on right now, which does some scanning of the network, pretty minimal though, and the bulk of all the rest of the operations are handled by these three agents below. We got full PCAP analysis and saving, which is full packet capture. The snort interface is a rule-based firewall system essentially, so intrusions are detected upon certain behaviors and then it alerts here in the system. And then the OSSEC is essentially an interface that is for the command center to do incident management. 30 services open on this single host, so there should be plenty of places to do some exploitation. If we take a quick look here, we have some RPC open, IRC port is open, got TCP port open at 8180. PostgreSQL is open, so quite a few issues open here. So we're going to implement an attack on this network file system, NFS. So let's take a look at that file here. So we have OpenSSH. It even gives us the protocol that we're implementing on this system, the NFS ports, and then we also have this RPC port open as well. I'll use RCP info to get a little more information on that port. PC, sorry. So quite a bit of services there. And if we look a little further here, just isolate the NFS. So we've got UDP and TCP ports open here. See what is actually being shared here. So this is mounted to the root directory, so if we can access this, we're going to have complete ownership of this system. So create a key here so we can access the system with SSH. So we have a public key, and we have a private key here now. Let's see if we can mount this file system here on our own machine. Alright, so we've added that key into authorized keys here. And then we'll try and SSH into this system. And we are now in the system. So we're able to create directories. Delete. So full access there. Let's see what we were able to pick up with. So we'll do a pretty intensive scan of the whole network here. See what kind of red flags we can cook up. Alright, so with this latest scan, it's really starting to pop up a bunch of activity. These are all being detected by the 4-dot agent, which is going to be installed on this other system. But you can see this scanner is really aggressive, searching for any potential exploits possible. It's finding a lot of exploits here on this Metasploit system here. And then using ELSA, we can pivot over to this other program. To look at some greater detail what's going on. So in conclusion, the scanner obviously picked up, gave a lot of red flags for this security onion system. The initial hack that I did with the NFS, hacking into the NFS system, really didn't throw up any flags at all. So I'd like to work on increasing the capability of the rules built into the system so that we can detect smaller issues, and obviously it was pretty spot on with detecting issues with some massive scans by this Sparta program, which is pretty invasive. This will go through and actually pull screenshots of any banners that it might encounter while it's doing scans. It'll actually suggest any exploits that are possible given the ports that are open, the versions that has popped up. So yeah, definitely I like the capabilities of the system so far, but it's definitely going to need a little more fine-tuning before it's ready for a installation. So yeah, thank you so much for taking some time to check out my project. I'd like to, in the near future, really add some additional functionality in setup and start creating some ability to produce reports, and then also work on creating an application to remotely monitor the system and actively potentially kick off users, shut down and quarantine the system while you're away from your computer terminal. All right, well, thank you.